Okay, Rabotai, we are picking up on 27a on Chav Zayin and Aleph. I realized I should have shared this before I started the recording, but okay, it's not a big deal. So, God willing, if I'm just going to do a general mute because there's background noise. Okay. Please unmute responsibly. Okay, so God willing, if I calculated correctly, we are projected, assuming our schedule stays on track, we are projected to finish Megillah on Thursday, February 23rd. I sent out an email. A few of you are nodding. That means you've already taken the liberty of reading through the email. Thank you. And Purim, if I'm not mistaken, I think is March 6th. I need to look to confirm, but no, Judd, you're shaking your head. When's no? Okay, so someone can check their calendar. I believe Purim is at the beginning of March. So sometime between us, God willing, finishing or about to finish Masechta and Purim, it would be really nice if we could actually do a siyum on Masechta's Megillah around Purim time or before Purim. I think it'd be very apropos. So anyway, number one is just to start looking at your calendars around that time and seeing what Sunday mornings work and don't work. At some point, I will send out a survey to determine what works for the most people. That makes sense to me, at least. There are two ways primarily to be involved. I'm looking for one or two people to chair or co-chair helping organize and spearhead the siyum. We want to do what we did last time. For those not familiar, we had a very nice brunch at the shul. We were assigned the Masechta. People shared reflections. It was a great breakfast. So it'd be nice to do something like that again. And it's also nice for us. I know we're generally on Zoom these days, but for all of us to get together in person if we can. So either organizing, and then also it's an opportunity for those who might want to help dedicate the siyum in honor or memory of someone. That's also an opportunity. If you're interested in either the helping make it happen or by organizing or the sponsorship, email me and we'll try to make this work. Okay.
Rabbi, did you want to have this at night or during the day?
I think it worked well when we did a brunch last time, but I'll try to take a survey.
That would be on the 7th.
I need to look at a calendar, but
yeah, I'm looking at it.
Okay, so I'll sit down with the calendar and I'll send out whatever options we have. People can let me know if they prefer daytime, nighttime. I'll put those options out there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, great. So anyway, just putting on your radar, we're still a number of weeks out, but already looking for people who want to help maybe with the organizing. Okay, so here we go. Last week we left off learning that there's a machlokis, what has more sanctity, a Beis HaKnesses, a place designated primarily exclusively for prayer, or a place that is a Beis Medrash that is designated for Torah study. And so this debate actually comes out in the following discussion here on the third line, Chasayin Manav. Darsh Bar Kafra, my Siv, Beisarvis, Beis Hashem, Beis Hanav, Kol Bati Yerushalayim, Kol Bayis Gadol Sar Beish. So it's talking about all these different kinds of buildings in Jerusalem that were burnt by fire. So what are all these different buildings? Beis Hashem, the house of God, Zeh Beis HaMikdash, that refers to the temple. Seems pretty straightforward. Beis Melech, the house of the king, refers to the king's palaces. There's Kol Bati Yerushalayim, the houses of Jerusalem. Don't need to be a rocket scientist. Kimashman, it's referring to the houses of Jerusalem. That's Kol Bayis Gadol Saraf Be'esh. But the question is, what's mean every big house that was burnt in fire? Like, do we need to talk about like the mansions separately? So Yochanan Yeshua ben Levi, one says it's referring to a place where they are megadol, you can understand it's like cultivate or they glorify Torah. The other is where they cultivate and glorify prayer. Meaning one is saying it's a Beis Medrash, the other one is saying is that it's a Beis HaKnesses. By the way, for those who were around when we did the children in shul shir, we actually quoted this Gemara because we're talking about how the shul is supposed to be a place that cultivates Torah and cultivates tefillah. So just quick footnote over there for those who recall. So here we go. Man Amar Torah. So, okay, well, what's the basis for assuming that a Bayis Gadol, a big house, is referring to Torah or tefillah? So the basis for associating gedula with Torah, Tiksiv Hashem chafetz lamad seko yagdil Torah v'yadir. So we see the idea of God being yagdil Torah, making Torah great. We don't need to make it great again. It always was, is, and will be great. Amad Amar Tefillah, and those who say that godless and Tefillah go together. Tiksiv Sabrna Hagidolos Asher Asa Elisha, that we should tell over the great deeds of Elisha. Elisha to Avabarachnu to Oven, and Elisha accomplishes great feats through prayer to God. So we see that godless, that Gedula is associated with both Torah and Tefillah, and you can really parse it either way you like. But what we do come out with is Tistayim Darashum and Levi who are Mugsh Megalbo Torah, Darashum and Levi, based on this also based on Mitzvah Shmamina. We know that it must be Rashu ben Levi who says that the Bayis Gadol is referring to a house of Torah study, because Rashu ben Levi is also the person who held that you can sell a Beis HaKnesses to purchase a Beis Medrash, but you can't sell a Beis Medrash to purchase a Beis HaKnesses, which I believe is actually how we paskin, that a Beis Medrash has a higher level of sanctity than a Beis HaKnesses. It's a little counterintuitive because we might be aware that for those who are Talmidei Chachamim who study in the Beis Medrash, they're actually allowed to eat and take a Sheina Sarai, they're allowed to take a power nap in there. We did a little time, I remember when, I was learning Eretz Yisrael in the gap year programs, because all the programs, you have Van and everything, and by the time you get back to your dorm, it's like 10:30, so you don't get a healthy amount of sleep, so you wind up sleeping in the Beis Medrash also. Okay, that's for another time. But the point being is that it's kind of ironic, because in a Beis HaKnesses, people think it has a higher level of Kedusha because you're not allowed to eat and drink in there. It's not that you're allowed to eat and drink in the Beis Medrash, it's that it's because it's supposed to be a home for Talmidei Chachamim, and if Talmidei Chachamim make the Beis Medrash your primary residence, then they're allowed to do things that one does in their residence.
Yeah. There are people that sleep in the Beit Knesset, though. You gotta know these.
Well, if the rabbi's sermon goes too long, that's on me then. That's my fault. I'm sorry. Very good, Henry. The people I worry about more, not the people who are sleeping in the Beis HaKnesses, the people who are too awake and a little too chatty in the Beis HaKnesses. But Ein Kam Makom Laharik. We'll say that for another time. Okay. Moving forward, we are quoting our Mishnah now, analyzing another line. We learned in our Mishnah of a Makur Torah lo yichus svarim. We said that if someone someone sells a Torah, those funds cannot be used to purchase other svarim. You can't sell a Torah to purchase Nevi'im and Ksuvim, or even to purchase Chumashim that are in separate volumes. So that leads us to the natural question: Ibailahu, Mahu limkor sefer Torah yashan likat bo chadash. Can I sell an old Torah in order to have funds to purchase a new Torah? So I might say, maybe, right? We say, this is like, how do you parse the statement, right? It says that we're malim b'kodesh and reading. We go up in Kedusha, we don't go down. So which clause, phrase, I don't know how the right words phrase, but which part of that principle do we emphasize? Is it more of an issue of going down in Kedusha, or is it that there's an imperative that you always have to go up in Kedusha? You can't remain stagnant. In other words, is it sufficient to buy something of equal sanctity to that which you are selling, or do you dafka have to elevate to the next stage of sanctity? To which the issue is, you're not going to get more sanctified than the Sefer Torah itself. Odila came to shopper dummy. Maybe because you've hit the top of the totem pole, you're at the top of the hierarchy, there's nowhere else to go. Maybe you could sell an old Sefer Torah to purchase a new one. So now what the Gemara is going to do for the next, it takes up almost like about half of the material on the Amud over here, is it's going to cite one proof after another proof to try to determine whether one may sell an old Torah to purchase a new Torah. That is our primary question that we are going to be dealing with for the next little while. So I just want to make sure, does the question make sense? We hear both sides. Can I clarify anything? Because everything hinges. Judd.
Just as an aside, or maybe if you're going to get to it, is a puzzle Sefer Torah a different category?
Very good question, right?
Because it's, go ahead.
No. It's a great question, right? Because the puzzle one you're saying is it's no longer functional. So it's a good point, Jeff. I think over here it refers to Sefer Torah Yashan. And I think Dafka says Yashan as opposed to puzzle because the Yashan one is functional. It might just not be like the thinner whatever centimeters that are today. So I think you are correct, Judd. If you have a Torah that is beyond repair and you need to purchase another one, I think the Gemara understanding is that it presumes that you would be able to do that. But
Why would anybody buy a puzzle Sefer Torah?
that's a great question. Well, I mean,
No, if it's just a little, a few letters here and there, you
Well,
could fix it. So
But
could fix it.
puzzle is puzzle.
Right. I mean, look, like Henry said, maybe the people selling it, it's too onerous for them to fix it. But one guy is going to make it his life project to fix that Sefer Torah. Maybe they want to use it for practice or something.
Right. For
The
practice,
shul
maybe
had a
like
puzzle Sefer Torah
explaining.
that we had on display. It survived the Holocaust. It was right outside the office entrance in the prior building. I don't know where it is now.
I think it's in the library.
Do you recall that one before you walked up the stairs?
I think I know you're referring to. I think it's
There?
in the library art.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a Torah that's still in that more or less location. Maybe that's it.
There's like 3 to 4 Torahs that are in there. And one of them I actually just discovered is actually kosher, which I didn't realize when we're taking inventory. If you go to the sanctuary, by the way, fun fact, half the Sefer Torah in there are puzzle. Other fun fact, you see in the center, there are 2 Sephardic Torah cases. One of them has a scroll in it, one of it doesn't. And the one that does have a scroll is puzzle, and then the Ksav is actually more of an Ashkenazi Ksav than of a Sephardic type, based on what our Sofer consultant told us. And it was dedicated by like someone named like Gertrude something or another, which last time I checked, Gertrude's not such a Sephardic name. So I'm sure you can have a Sephardic Gertrude. Anyway, fun facts about our inventory of Sefer Torah. This is what I think.
Chapter are we on? Where I started late. Where are we?
We're on 27a. Okay. All right, here we go. Going forward. So Tashima, there's going to be, how many did I write down? There's going to be 5 attempts to figure out the answer. So again, our mission now is to determine, can one sell a Sefer Torah to buy a new Sefer Torah? Tashima, avol machur Torah lo yikhu svarim. Svarmu delo pator b'Torah shaber dami. Well, if you read the Mishnah tells us that you cannot sell a Torah to purchase other svarim. So I can infer from there that you can't purchase other svarim, but you could purchase a Sefer Torah with those funds. If you just mute ourselves, please. Okay. So Masnisan di Avid kim kamavai lan lechatchila. So yes, that's a good inference, but that's only our mission is talking about b'diavad. If you sold it, what do you now do with those funds? We're lechatchila yidden, right? We don't want to just do things b'diavad. We don't want to do things haphazardly and ex post facto. I want to ask myself, I want to do things the most glad and yasher and best way possible. What should I do? That's not what our Mishnah is instructing us, and therefore, our Mishnah cannot be used as a proof. It's interesting that the Gemara assumes it's talking about b'diavad. I'll take them at their word for it. Next attempt number 2. Tashima, go in Sefer Torah ben Tpachos Chumashin, v'Chumashin ben Tpachos Nevi'im Uksuvim, Avalon Nevi'im Uksuvim Tpachos Chumashin, v'Chumashin ben Tpachos Sefer Torah. So what we're being told here now, we are quoting from the Tosefta. So this is a brisa. We're bringing in a new text right now, which is telling us that you can wrap something with the covering of something else that had a lower level of sanctity, but you cannot take, let's say, the cover of a Sefer Torah to use it to cover, let's say, a Megillah. You have a Megillah Sester. You're not going to, even if that was practical, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. So what do we see? Katani nihas gum Sefer Torah mitpachos chumashin. Oh, sorry. Mitpachos chumashin in mitpachos Sefer Torah lo. So what do we see over here? That you can actually cover a Sefer Torah with mitpachos of chumashin, but you would not be allowed to use the mantle of another Sefer Torah, which would be a huge problem for us because again, one of the challenges that comes up, especially at high holidays time, is when we switch over all of the covers, is that it's not always evident which mantle belongs to which Torah. Sometimes on the Torah, on the Yatzei Chaim, it'll have the name of the family who sponsored it, so you can figure out, this mantle goes to that Torah. But for the most part, it's pretty much guesswork because no one knows whose belongs to whose until that person has a yard site, walks into shul and sees it's on the wrong Torah, and then, all hell breaks loose. So anyway, Ema Seifa, so how are you so it would seem right now that you would not be allowed to use the mantle from one Torah to cover another Torah, which implies that you also would not be allowed to sell one Torah for another Torah. Torahs are not easily exchangeable. You can't just brush aside one Torah and say, this mantle went to that Torah, I'll put on the other one. So certainly I can't sell one Torah to purchase another Torah. Well, Ema Seifa below Chumashim et Pachos Sefer Torah, it says that you can't cover the Chumashim with the covers of a Sefer Torah. HaTorah Torah Shaper Dummy. Now, if the inference is you can't cover a single Chumash with the cover of an entire Sefer Torah, but the inference we can make is that you'd be able to cover a Sefer Torah with the cover of another Sefer Torah, since it's not being downgraded in Kedusha. So, because we can really infer either way, we walk away without a conclusion. That's going to be our theme for the next 3 attempts also. Attempt number 3 to figure out the answer to whether you can sell a Torah for another Torah. Tashma. Manichin Sefer Torah al Gabe Torah. One can place one Torah on top of another Torah. The Torah al Gabe Chumashim. A Torah can be placed on top of single volumes. The Chumashin al Gabe Nevim Uksuvim. And then volumes of the Chumash can be put on top of Sifrei Nach, or the prophets and writings. However, Avalon Nevim Uksuvim al Gabe Chumash al Gabe Torah. However, Nach cannot be placed on top of a Chumash, and a single volume of Chumash cannot be placed on top of an entire Sefer Torah. So what we see from here is, so we see from here that a Torah can be placed on top of another Torah, which means that it seems that Chazal are comfortable with treating each Torah with an equal level of sanctity, to the degree that I can put one Torah on top of another Torah. If I put one Torah on top of another Torah, I should be able to exchange one Torah for another Torah. It's the same principle at hand over here, after all. To which the Gemara says, Hanacha Kamrit, Shani Hanacha Delo Efshar. So here it's because it's not always possible. Sometimes practically one chumash will have to be put on top of another chumash. In fact, by the way, when you think about it, when you roll up a Torah, right, each layer of the scroll is on top of one layer, which is on top of the layer, which is on top of another layer. They're all on top of each other, stacked up. So we're clearly, because there's no other way, practically, to store a Sefer Torah, perforce you're going to have layer on top of layer of the writings of the Torah itself. Therefore, for placement purposes, we're fine with it. However, so too for placing one Torah scroll on top of another Torah scroll. But when it comes to exchanging one Torah scroll for another Torah scroll, we can't derive from this that we would go so far as say you can actually sell a Torah scroll for the purpose of purchasing another Torah scroll. So that is a deflection of attempt number 3. We're over the halfway point. We only got 2 attempts left.
Rabbi, where does a Talmud,
very good question.
Talmud, where do they come in the pecking order? And also the Siddur, I suppose, is on the bottom.
Excellent question, Phyllis. So Phyllis is asking, what does this mean practically, halacha l'maisa? There's one school of thought that this entire discussion only pertains to when we are talking about actual svarim written on cloth, and that's a real Sefer Torah. Common practice, however, is that even if a chumash is just like the art scroll stone chumash, and you have an art scroll, say the Sefer Shmuel, the chumash should go on top of the Sefer Shmuel. That's common. However, Me'ikr hadin on a strict halachic level, without any additives, it would seem that once we get to the level of rabbinic literature, all rabbinic literature, one could be placed on top of the other. However, I'm forgetting who in particular, but there are a number of poskim who actually were makbid that Rishonim should be put on top of Achronim, and that the Talmud should be put on top of Rishonim. And they actually infer, they kind of extrapolate these principles beyond Tanakh to rabbinic literature as well. As a matter of practicality, you don't need to be as makbid about it. But, sometimes like I'll have like this really like heavy duty halacha sefer, and I'll have like this one with like nice inspirational ideas. So I'm like, oh, I feel like I should put like the heavy duty halacha sefer on top of the nice inspirational ideas. But the truth is, Me'ikr hadin, you can mix and match as far as that is concerned. Okay, great question, folks. Paul, you gotta mute though. You're muted, Paul.
Sort of on the same tangent you went on. It's the common practice when someone's got a Sefer Torah on a table, you just take someone's talus and throw it over it to cover it. Isn't there an issue there with Malin Bakodesh? The talus was used on a human being.
Yeah, so the talus is, well, I thought what you were going to say is right. Once you use it for the Torah, how can the human then go use it? I mean, we could wax poetic and talk about how the human being has special status. Okay, but anyway, I think because it's used ba'akrai, that's the difference. Meaning a one-time use to cover the Torah doesn't make it hashmishe kedusha. It's like, let's say you put the Sefer Torah on a table temporarily, like let's say you just have a folding table and you need to temporarily put the Torah on there. So the table is not designated for the use of the Torah, it's ba'akrai, it's a one-time use for it. So similar to how we talked about remember we talked about the city, remember the city square, the street they would use on the Tanios and Mamados for the fast days and when they would do the laning of the Torah. So the Rabbanan Paskin, there's no residual Kedusha even because the street is not designated for prayer. It's just a one-time use for it. So I think it's a similar principle here as well. But you are right, Paul, right? We are kind of makbid that we want to lay a talsa, make sure it's respectful and protected. Okay, very good. Going forward. Tashima, attempt number 4. Tashima, there we go, a lot of names. Lo yimkor adam sefer Torah yasha nikach bo chadash. There we go. There's an explicit statement, right? That's what we were looking for, guys. He says it black and white. He says you cannot sell an old Sefer Torah to buy a new Sefer Torah. However, however, we could stipulate that this case where it says not allowed to sell a Sefer Torah is referring to when you don't have the second Sefer Torah ready, meaning you're going to sell it. This is similar, by the way, to our discussion about not removing material from the old shul until the new shul is done, because pshusa, we're afraid you're going to start disassembling the first shul and you won't have a second shul to daven in and you'll be left with no shul. Similar idea here. Maybe these rabbis are only telling us you can't sell a Sefer Torah if and when you don't have another Torah ready to go. However, our question is in the case where the second Torah has been commissioned, it's fully written, it's sitting on the sofer's desk, and all we need now are just the funds to pay him, and it's ours. So we have the second Sefer Torah. Still, we have a question, can I sell one Torah to purchase the other one? And to that, we don't have a clear indication still. So we deflect attempt number 4. Finally, attempt number 5. Tashima, Ain't Mokum Sefer Torah El Lilmo Torah Elisa Isha. Well, there we go. Shmamina Torah Shopper Dummy. So one is not allowed to sell a Sefer Torah unless it's for the study of Torah or in order to marry a woman. So we see from here, since you could sell a Sefer Torah to study Torah, it would make sense that you could sell a Torah to buy another Torah to study from. There we go. That's a good proof. So we can't sell a Sefer Torah to buy another Sefer Torah. Dilma, Shani Talmud Torah, Talmud maybe the Maisa. Maybe there's a difference between purchasing a Sefer Torah versus funding Talmud Torah. Rashi says, what's it mean to study Torah? Torah, that, to get money to support yourself to learn in Kollel. So, because here's the thing, it's regrettable, but how often do we see that there's beautiful Sifrei Torah or beautiful sets of Sfarim that could sit on someone's shelf and collect dust and remain unused? Buying a Torah or buying Sfarim in general, unfortunately, is not a guarantee that they're going to be utilized. So therefore, one can sell a Torah to support the study of Torah, but we cannot infer from that one could also sell a Torah to just purchase another Torah. And likewise, what is unique about why would you be able to sell a Sefer Torah in order to marry someone? So Ishanami lo sobara l'sheves yitzra, because it says that the world was not created to be a barren place. God put us in here to populate it, which perhaps means we talked about this in terms of pikuach nefesh on Shabbos, that if there's nobody around, well, the Torah is not going to learn itself, right? Say like for a meal, this meal is not going to eat itself. So if the Torah is not going to learn itself. So in order to ensure the continuity of the Jewish people, that would supersede even owning the Sefer Torah. Avol Torah b'Torah lo. So we cannot infer from here, however, that one can sell one Torah for another Torah. So we throw our hands up. We're not sure. Based on this Gemara, it is unclear whether one can actually sell a Torah to buy another Torah.
I have a question.
You have to be thankful for Rishonim.
Moshe?
The majority opinion of Rishonim, the Rif, the Rush, and according to the standard read of the Rambam, it is forbidden. One cannot sell an old Torah to buy a new one. In the Sefer Rishon LeZion, this is just a bit of a summary of what he says. I'll read for you. He writes, Shaharambam lama shekiven shekamar hivia es divrei Reb Shimon Gamliel shel yimkor adam sefer Torah yachol nikach bo chadash mashma shetamed aser mashadasa gamar sheshamhu mishum shemayivshu hu dichoy bilvad. So basically, remember in the Gemara we quoted those rabbis who seem to have a consensus that you are not allowed to sell a Sefer Torah, and then we said, but maybe they're only saying you can't sell a Sefer Torah because of Pshia, you'll neglect to buy another one afterwards. So that the Gemara was giving almost like a perfunctory rebuttal, but the way the Rambam understands it was like a half-hearted rebuttal. The truth is, we see that the Chazal seem to have there are a lot of significant rabbis who got together and said you can't sell a Sefer Torah to buy another one. So that seems to be the conclusion according to most Rishonim. However, Rabbeinu Manoach has a different reading of the Rambam, in which he says, when does the Rambam say it's usher to sell one Torah for another? So dafka b'makom she'efshar lachshosh l'pshia. No, he has the opposite reading. Only when there is a concern for pshia, for negligence, that you won't be able to obtain another Torah, that's when the Rambam says it's usher to sell a Sefer Torah. But the Rambam actually would hold that it is mutter to sell one Torah to buy another Torah. All I can say is, if and when this becomes a practical question, consult your local Orthodox rabbi. Okay. Final piece over here before we get to the next section of the Mishnah. Tanar Rabbanan. Lo yimkor adam sefer Torah aval b'shinut tzarich lo. A person should not sell a Sefer Torah even if he doesn't plan on using it. He has no use for it. Yes, Came, and moreover, Amar Shimon Gamliel, Afila ein lo ma yochal u'machar Sefer Torah bito ein ora siman bracha la'olam. Even if you have, doesn't mean literally nothing to eat because you have to preserve your life, but you're living off small rations, and you sell a Sefer Torah, or you sell your daughter as an Amma Ivriya, as a Jewish maidservant, in order to get funds, you're not going to see blessings from that transaction. So don't think that's going to be of help. It ain't a good idea. Okay, which is a good point because there are things in the Torah that we're allowed to do, but God's not too happy about it. So even though there is this portion of Torah that says that you can have your daughter become a Jewish maidservant, that's definitely not something that God or the rabbis really want us to be doing. Okay.
Moshe,
And that section of the Gemara. Yes, Zadie.
on one of my trips to Israel, I davened in a shul that did not own a Sefer Torah. They were using a borrowed one. Let's say I have a Sefer Torah and I have no intention of using it. Under those circumstances, could I gift my Sefer Torah to that shul, which definitely would be using it?
Interesting. It would seem so. In fact, by the way, that's what most people do, is that when you commission a Sefer Torah, it's considered like sort of like an act of tzedakah in a certain way. You still retain ownership, but you're also giving the shul the right to use it. So that's actually something that's normally done when people dedicate a Torah. They like to retain ownership over it.
I'm talking about a change of ownership.
Oh, I see. Because what you're saying is, if someone goes ahead and sells the Torah, they're not going to see a siman bracha. But right, why would that be an issue? If they sell it, why would be giving it a gift be any better than selling it? Right? Is that what you're asking?
Because there's no monetary benefit to me.
Right.
It is the covetor because it's going to be used, and I'm not receiving anything other than the scarf for it, satisfaction, appreciation from the minion, but why would I retain ownership? I'm never going to use it.
Right. Let me see. Let me see if I can quickly find something. I would think that it is okay to. I would think that you're correct. I just I can't quickly turn all the pages and read everything on the spot, but it does. Your intuition seems correct to me. So just give me a moment to get a little warm here. All right. Final section for tonight. Here we go.
Rabbi, excuse me, the Zadie's question might depend on so once it's written, you fulfilled the mitzvah, or is the mitzvah really to own it? In which case you'd be foregoing it if you actually donated it rather than lent it. That might
interesting, right? So what Henry's bringing in is that the final mitzvah in the Torah is to actually write a Torah for yourself. So is the mitzvah simply to write, or is it to possess it? So actually, I mean, the mitzvah is because we're told that even if your father owned a Torah and he passed that down to you, you still have a mitzvah of ksiva, Sefer Torah, of actually writing the Torah. Though there does seem to be a mitzvah to own as well. I believe it's the Rush who mentions I think it's the Rush who goes so far as to say that even owning Svarim, like these, is a fulfillment of that mitzvah to a certain extent as well. However, the Rambam writes actually, if you write even one letter in the Torah, you will fulfill the mitzvah, which is why I was very encouraging of when we wrote the Sefer Torah here, at the Achnas Sefer Torah at the shul recently, to just come and write that letter. I mean, you have to fulfill the 613th mitzvah. You didn't have to write the whole Torah according to that. But yeah, that might tie in as well. If there's a value to owning your own Torah and holding on to it. It's similar to, it reminds me a little bit of the Ramban on Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, moving to Eretz Yisrael. The Ramban says that when the Torah commands us to inherit the land of Israel and to conquer it, it's not that simply just come in, conquer it, and then go and move to the Bahamas and hang out there for the rest of your days. But it's a mitzvah also to dwell and to live in Eretz Yisrael. So it's not sufficient to do a one-time act, but it's when it's supposed to dwell and live there too. Okay, very good.
I think that the mitzvah to write a Sefer Torah has the intent in it that you should read it
Yeah,
and use it, and therefore have your conduct guided by it.
absolutely. It's not just supposed to be a piece of Judaica that's sitting behind a glass case, unless it's no longer usable and it's there for sentimental purposes. But I think you know what I mean. Okay, agreed. Good discussion. Okay, let's get to the final section for this evening. Amalia Abayel Humirabanan. No, wait, did I skip something? I did. So, as you recall, the Mishnah tells us at the end that any surplus funds that are left over. So let's say you you sell the shul. So now that you sold the shul, you have money, and you're going to use that money to, let's say, go all the way to the top, purchase a Sefer Torah. The remaining funds would still carry kedusha, would still carry sanctity with them. So Amarava, however, that's only when you sold. Let's say you sold the shul. So the sanctity of the shul, unless you're doing it under right circumstances, transfers onto the funds that were used to buy the shul. And that's because there's pre-existing kedusha in the shul. However, let's say you fundraised money to put into the shul, and you realize that you have a lot more money than you actually needed, and you want to use that money for a non-shul cause. Haha, that's very funny. Right? Can you ever imagine that? The shul fundraises too much money. We're just going to throw it away and give it to some other cause. I doubt that's something that our organization would do. But in theory, if you fundraise...
Support the Kohanim with it.
What was that?
Support the Kohanim with it.
Support the Kohanim with it, right. Pay the, right, okay. So, Aval Gavos to your mutter. But Rabbi says, if you fundraise, and it makes sense, by the way, because the money that's fundraised, remember we're talking about the beans that weren't yet put into the shul? So it's kind of similar to that, because since the money never went into the shul, it was never imbued with Kedushas Beis HaKnesses. It never got that sanctity. However, Isvei Abai is a little bit of a close read over here. Hang on to this one. Isvei Abai cites a brisa which would seem to contradict Rava's assumption. We'll talk about what chsusia is later. Just it's for a non particularly holy cause, not unholy, just secular, not holy. So Abai cites the brisa which says, when do we say this? When you didn't make a tanai. But if you made a tanai, you made a stipulation. So only when you make a explicit stipulation can you use the remaining money to for non-Beis HaKnesses cause. So Heichidami, what is this obscure line in the brisa referring to that you need to stipulate in order to use the money? If we're saying that when you sell the Beis HaKnesses, you can stipulate that any remaining money will not have kedusha. That doesn't work because the Beis HaKnesses has kedusha whether you like it or not. So it's going to transfer onto that money. Ella shagavu v'hosiro. Rather, what's the brisa referring to? A case where you fundraised and you have a surplus amount of money from the fundraising campaign. Taima dehisnu halo hisnu lo. The only reason that you can use the remaining money for a non-Beis HaKnesses cause is because you stipulated that this is non-specifically holy money. We will take this money and we will choose what we will allocate towards a sanctified cause. So that's only if you make such a stipulation. The point being is that Rabbah says we assume by default any surplus fundraised money can be used for whatever you want. Abai says from this brisa only if you make an explicit stipulation that the money is not going specifically to a sanctified cause. However, we can reject Abai's reading of the brisa with an alternative reading of the brisa that will help save Rava's position. La'olam shemachru v'hosiro b'haki kamar. So rather, the brisa is talking about a case where you sold the shul and you're stipulating that the money will not be kedusha. And what is the case that the Bryce is referring to? It's referring to the case of where there are, remember, our good friends, the 7 trustees of the synagogue, when they sell the synagogue in the presence of the people of the city, and they stipulate that the money will not inherit the sanctity of the shul, that's when making a stipulation works. However, if you're just fundraising the money and the money never was used for the shul to begin with, that doesn't even require stipulation. Only when you're selling a shul through the 7 trustees do you need to make such a stipulation. That's what Rava would respond to Abaye. So that's Machlokes Rava and Abaye. Do you need to specifically stipulate? By the way, this comes up in halacha all the time in so many different areas. Do we just assume things are fine, or do you have to opt out? Right, that's a good way of putting it. You have to opt out. You know what's a good example? Women lighting candles on Erev Shabbos. Do we assume that, and this is the general assumption, that when a woman lights candles on Erev Shabbos, she is implicitly, automatically accepting Shabbos when she lights candles, which is why women will first cover their eyes and then make the bracha afterwards, because you don't want to accept Shabbos with the bracha and then be mechal Shabbos by lighting the candles. So it's a similar idea there, that we assume that it's usher unless you explicitly stipulate that you're not accepting Shabbos right now. So let's say a woman, she wants to light candles at home, and then I had this shiloh not so long ago. Someone reached out. They actually had moved out of the community, but I guess they didn't find a rabbi where they moved to, so they called me back up. So she wanted to light candles at home, but there's 2 parts to the question: where to light her candles, and then what to do afterwards. So we determined, based on a few factors, she should light it at home, even though her Friday night meal was elsewhere. And then the question was, could she then drive over to the meal before Shabbos? So what came out was that I told her, just when you're lighting, just stipulate that you're not accepting Shabbos. It's a similar principle over here. Abaye is saying we assume that this money is usher to be used for other purposes unless you opt out and stipulate otherwise. Rava is saying that we assume by default it's mutter, you have to opt in to make it usher to you. So that's basically the machlokes. We see, again, a similar kind of opt-in, opt-out machlokes in other areas of halacha as well. Okay.
So in that situation, Rabbi, where the woman is deferring Shabbos, she should have her eyes open when she lights.
She should have her eyes open. Well, right, because then it's overlapped.
You're really doing it. You're showing it.
Interesting. I think it would just be like a low plug, that's just like the Ashkenazi customs. You're not gonna, but you're saying is once you're not accepting Shabbos, you may as well make the bracha over la siyasa.
Right.
It's a good point. It's a good point, Judd. I'm not saying I've seen all literature on there. I haven't seen anyone say it, but it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm sure somebody does, and I'm just not aware of it because it's a good svara. Okay, and if you're Sephardi, you don't have to worry because you always do it that way. So another reason why being Sephardi is easier, right? Okay. Okay, let's wrap up our Gemara. As an afterthought, Amrle Abaye L'Humei Rabbanan to have Masader Masnisa Kamid Rav Sheshes. Mishmiach Rav Sheshes my dichsusia. So Abaye asked the person who was presenting the Mishnayos, collating them in front of Rav Sheshes. Do you know if Rav Sheshes knows what the word dichsusia was from that Bryce? Remember the Bryce said, and that money, if you stipulate, you can even use it for a non-holy cause, a dichsusia. What's a dichsusia? So I didn't know what the word meant, and I'm in good company because apparently the Amoraim didn't know what it meant either. So Amar Le'ahachi Amar of Sheshes, I didn't have art scroll back then to tell him either. So Parasha Demasa, it's referring to the guy who would be in charge of the horses, who basically Rashi says, if you need to send a message, you didn't have email or anything, you just kind of just like a guy hanging around the stables, and as soon as you need a message sent, you tell that guy, hop on your horse and send my mail out, bring this Amazon package over. So the town intertown delivery service. So in other words, you could use the money for the intertown horse delivery service, which is not a holy cause, not an unholy cause, just not a holy cause. So that's what
Pony Express rider.
the Pony Express rider. I like it. Samar Abai, Hilkach, Heitzur Rabbanan, the Shamale, Nilsavla, Yada Berusha, Lashile, Kame, the Shkia, Kame Rabbanan, so Ashadol Shamiale, and Gavaraba. A general principle that if you ever are not sure about a particular halacha, you should go over to a rabbi who hangs around a Gadol Hadur who will always know the answer, which this is a general principle in my line of work. Since I work in the pulpit, I'm surrounded by many intelligent and wonderful people all the time. But we don't exactly have, insert your favorite Gadol Hadur living here in Stanford yet. So therefore, many times, if I have a question on something, rather than me bother, let's say Rabbi Mordechai Willig directly, I could ask someone who I know is someone who hangs out with Rabbi Willig on a regular basis. And I can say, hey, has Rabbi Willig or has Rabbi Schachter, has Rabbi so-and-so opined on this particular issue? So it's always good to talk with the rabbis who are learning in the Kollel, who spend a lot of time with the Gedolei Torah and might have access to information that some of us who haven't been in the Beis Medrash as recently may not have access to. So that's what Abai is basically saying, just a practical rabbinic advice. Okay. Amar Rav Yochanan, final halacha for tonight. We're going to talk about tzedakah. Amar Rav Yochanan, Mishurei Meir, Bnei ha'ir shahochu le'ir acheres, upasko lein tzedakah nosnin ukshehim bayin mevin osan iman ufarsim ba'aniyei ira. When a group of people, one community, goes to another town, and so the way it works, it's kind of funny. Some people, think that that Judaism is not into government mandated charity. We see it come up in the Gemara all the time, so this is always just a very good example of where people say that the Torah clearly aligns with one political party or the other. The Torah will align on most, there's a big asterisk by things like abortion, but most social issues with a more conservative approach. However, when it comes to fiscal matters, let's say, welfare and those kind of things, there's a legitimate argument to be made for a more progressive approach to the fiscal matters. Anyway, I don't want to have a huge political debate, but this is a good example of that where you see that here in the Gemara, and you see it all the time in the Gemara. So the halacha is that they give tzedakah where they are, just like everybody else. But when they're ready to depart and return back to their hometown, they could go to the Gabbai Tzedakah. They could go to whoever the charity organizer is, say, we deposited $100,000 with you. Please give it back to us so we can then disperse it to the members of our city. Indeed, there is a brisa that supports this. Exactly what we just said. They can take the money, they can request the money they donated to take it back with them to give to their aniyim. However, if you come as an individual, you are subsumed within the broader community and you are mandated to give tzedakah, and it's your loss. So what could actually, it'd be nice if they give you a voucher, by the way, but I don't think it'll work that way. When you come back to your other city, they could tax you again, and so you have to pay double tzedakah. I'm not sure if they have this worked out, but it'd be nice if they had like a voucher system. I gave tzedakah over here, so now I'm exempt from giving taxes over here. They might say, well, why did you go over there? That's your loss. It's kind of like if you have a company that is multinational and you have offices in 2 different countries, I believe you're going to wind up paying taxes to both countries. If you're in a tax haven on some island somewhere, that's a different story, but beyond the scope of our discussion. Rav Huna Gazer Tanisa. So Rav Huna, here's a story that elaborates on this a little bit. Rav Huna Gazer Tanisa. Rav Huna declared a tainus, a fast. By the way, we will have to discuss what our next Masechta is going to be. Tainus is a reasonable candidate. I'll try to come up with 2 or 3 options, and when I send out the Google Doc about when and where we'll have her see him, I'll try to add in preferences for our next Masechta. But I only mention this because Tainus naturally talks about fast days. So Rav Huna declared a Tainus. Rav Chana bar Chanilai and his community came to join this community with all the practices of the fast that were taking place. Ramo Alayu Tzedakah, and I guess they regretted coming because soon thereafter they said, by the way, our practice is that on fast days we give extra tzedakah so that God will favor us, which makes sense. So Yahavu, they gave it, and Kibola Mese, when they want to go back, Amrule, no Solon Mar, Veniso, and the Faris Bani mustn't give us our money back so we can go support the members of our town. Amrlahu, but however, Rav Huna responds to them, Tanina Bamed Devarim Amurim B'She'ein Sham, turning the page, Chaver Ir, Aliyishim Chaver Ir, Tinasi LeChaver Ir. However, that all these laws about being able to take your money back with you is only when there isn't a chaver is language of someone who's a generally a learned, halakhically scrupulous person, which is Rav Huna as the rabbi of the city. So when there's such a person, the assumption is that when you give him the money, he can keep it for his purposes. And certainly in this case, apparently Rav Huna was in the central city, and Rav Chanilai and his band of merry men came from a smaller town who actually relied on the tzedakah proceeds from Rav Huna's town. So they're actually considered one big community. So it wouldn't even make sense under normal circumstances for them to be able to take that money back with them, because the major federation apparently was in Rav Huna's town. It's interesting. Rashi describes what's it mean a chaver ir, a talmid chacham hamisasik v'tzarich tzibur. That there's different categories of talmidei chachamim. Some are the ones that just study all day. Some of them are like the nonprofit CEO rabbis who are like in charge of like the fundraising and federation work and all that kind of stuff. So apparently Rav Huna was a very big scholar, but he was also one of those nonprofit rabbis who was doing all the fundraising as well. So interesting to see different models of rabbis that haphazardly come up in the Gemara. All right, Rabbosai, that brings us to the end of our learning for this evening, and we, God willing, will pick it up with a new Mishnah. And you can see where we saw there's going to be a number of Mishnayos coming up. I think in close proximity, relatively close proximity. Anyway, again, take a look at the email, please. And if you were interested in chairing or co-chairing our SEAM event coming up, I'd be very grateful for your partnership. So please reach out directly if you're interested. Thank you very much, and wishing you all a most wonderful Shabbos.
Shabbos and Freilich and Hanukkah, Terry.
Right, Sunday night, Freilich and Hanukkah to all.
And where is the library?
Thank you.
Library is on the first floor in that old wing. I'll help you find it when you're next at shul. How about that? It's hard to describe. All right, take care.